Hi, welcome to the Christmas candle paint party. I'm so excited. We've got some VIPs here with us. We've got some first-time painters with us, and it's so exciting that I'm going to be able to share this project with you tonight. We're going to do pretty simple strokes here. It's not too difficult, and hopefully we'll be able to get this done in about 3 hours, and that includes like a little bit of a break too. We're thinking about putting a poinsettia in the middle of this here. So if you don't feel like you want that there, you don't have to. If you want to make a white poinsettia, sometimes they come pink, sometimes they come red. You know, the red ones are sometimes a little bit more of the advanced ones, I say, because it's harder to shade red. So you have to definitely think about how to put a highlight on red without making it look pink if you don't want it to look pink. So definitely I can play around on paper and show you a couple different colors, and then you guys can choose what color you want to try on your canvas, or you can just paint on paper tonight and keep practicing until you feel confident, and then you can always repaint this design with the recording. Okay, so then you'll be able to repeat it on fabric, you'll be able to paint it on a plastic plate. There's some nice silver gold plates that you can get at the dollar store, and so you can definitely repaint this a couple different versions. Say you want to make your candles red instead of white. Maybe you want to make a blue background. So there's so many different variations and ideas, and I want you guys to keep this in mind when you recreate it. Make it your own. Okay, so I'm just getting you started. All right, so I'm going to change the view of my camera over to my canvas, and so you'll be able to follow me. Yeah.
I just wanted to show you something. I get these at the dollar store.
Oh yeah.
They're hot plate, hot, for a hot plate,
Oh, yeah.
But if you reverse paint it, you can make put the candle on that for $1. They're adorable. I
Oh
mean,
my God, you did a great job. That's
yeah, but I'm saying
awesome.
put the candle or anything would make nice little gifts for Christmas for $1.
Sure, exactly. That's what I mean. Just nothing's safe. I paint on anything.
Me too. Okay,
Even
that's all I
my
wanted to
nails.
tell you.
Even my nails. Look, I don't know if you can see that. I put poinsettias on, pink poinsettias on my nails. Where's my focus there?
I got to work with you to show me how to paint little.
Little tiny. This was with a number 6. Number 6.
I
So,
tried, but I can't.
yeah.
I did roses before, but that's it, little tiny ones. But okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so let's get some painting done tonight. We're going to start off with our background, so you need a sponge, and I wanted to start the background off with some more muted colors, so then when we do the leaves and stuff like that, they're a little bit brighter. So I used the thicket and a citrus green for the background with some white, so they're a little bit more softer colors, and then I used more of the lime green or the happy green, or a little brighter citrus green is a little bit softer, right? So definitely think about a little bit softer background and then brighter design. Okay, so we're going to get out our background colors and start with that. And we're going to get you a better view on what I'm doing here. I'm so excited. There we go. You guys can see a full view of my canvas here. Alright, so we're going to get some paint out. Just had some citrus green and thicket. If you don't have any sap green or darker green, we can always add a little bit of cobalt or darker blue with it, and that'll make a little bit different, darker variation of a green as well. And you can always add a little bit more white to your citrus green too, and that'll soften things a little bit too. So like I said, anytime you have any questions, just let me know. I've been using the Donna Dewberry sponges, but any sponges will work. So I've even used like my kitchen sponges that you can get 6 of them from at the dollar store, and then you can cut them in a little circle, and you need one side for flat and then the other side a little circle, and that helps to make softer clouds and softer squirrels and stuff like that. So sometimes you need a harsh line, you got it, and then if you need a softer line. So that's the nice thing about the Donna Dewberry ones, and she has a smaller one too, that the smaller one has a little bit of a triangle shape to it. But for today's design, definitely you can use these ones here. I found them at a dollar store, and some of them have a little bit more texture to them, like the sea sponges. They're going to give you a little bit different look too. And it's just whatever you like to do is fine. Right. So, and then what I like to do is dampen my sponge a little bit, and I only dampen really only half of it. I try not to get the back part too wet so it doesn't drip down my hand. Okay. So you want to drip that out so that it's, get most of that water out of there so that it's not soaking wet, because you can always wet it a little bit more at a time, but definitely once it's too wet, it's not going to give you a nice strong color. Okay, so we're going to double load our sponge, and what I do is I just put one corner in our sponge and then the other corner on the other side, and then just below it try to start blending it together, working into the sponge. Okay, so I always like starting with lighter colors first, because you can always make them darker as you move down, but once you have dark color in your sponge, it's really hard to get back light again. Okay, so you can just start dabbing it away, just applying the color. You can even, just get it on there. If you like a little bit more streaky look like this, you can always, leave it like that, like a gradient, right? So right now we're just getting the coverage on there. And because this is a wrapped canvas, you can do right around the sides, because you don't even have to worry about putting a frame on these guys. Okay, so something quick. Okay, so that's pretty even color. Now if you want it to be a little bit more spotty, I'm going to go into my white, and now I'm just going to dab a bunch of white areas. So I'm not being any strategic. You see that? Now once I have these down, okay, now I'm just going to very lightly kind of spin my sponge, tap, 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 just very lightly so I can keep that mottled look. Okay, there's no real rocket science to it. Okay, just a little bit of a tapping motion just to soften it a little bit. Okay, and if it's too white anywhere you don't like it, just keep dabbing it very lightly. Cat hair, who figured? Not in my house. I'm surprised she's not jumping on the desk right now. She's probably sleeping somewhere. She's upset that she can't go outside anymore. It's winter time. Miss Molly. Alright, so how are we doing so far? You liking the way the top is started? Because I really don't want you to come back up here, right? If you don't have to. But you still have this side of the sponge if you really have to use it to go back with the light again. But like I said, the goal is trying to get this looking nice and almost about 2/3 down. So then that way we can overlap it a little bit and get some mid-tone in the middle. So now I'm going to go over to my thicket, and I'm going to reload my white and blend that in a little bit, right? So this time I want it to be a little bit darker, so I'm picking up lots of green, okay? And I'm going to flip my canvas upside down. It's just a lot easier to work down than trying to get up underneath. And then this way you can easily get up around the bottom of your canvas. So what I'm doing is focusing on the dark green right now. I'm just kind of tipping my sponge on the side so that I'm not even hitting any white there. Okay? And then as we get the coverage there, then again we can do the same thing and just try to get that coverage in there. Very easy background. If you feel like it's not dark enough, then definitely add a little bit more dark, especially at the very, very bottom. And I'm still trying to keep my white fairly high up so that I'm not going to dirty my white. And just a nice, soft, darker look. If you really, really wanted to have a little bit more richness and darkness, you could add a little bit more thicket into here, just around the, not thicket, sap green. But, you know, my original I didn't. And so you can see that I stopped just below that line. And then now I'm going to try and leave my white side up. Okay, you can self-pause, it'll probably be fine with this. Okay, I'm a little bit ambidextrous. And I'm kind of sponging it so the white part is on the light, the top part, right? So then that way I'm not going to make too big of a mess into my light area. Okay, so now we can just kind of, you know, kind of blend this in, just very softly, play with it a little bit. Now remember, in the middle here, you're not going to even see a lot of that fade, so you really just have to worry about the sides here. Okay, you can bring a little bit more of the lightness there. Okay. And then on my light side now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a little bit of that citrus, okay, because I want to brighten that up a little bit into my gradient. Okay, so you see how I reverse that now? The citrus is now on your white side and still keeping your thicket on the darker side. Okay, just softly blend that up and really lighten up on your touch. You're really, you know, hard on your touch, and then when you're starting to get up into that area, just very, very baby little bit of pouncing. Okay. Add a little bit more warmth down here. And just keep playing with it. And if you wanted to add more depth to it, is looking too light, if you let it dry a little bit and then go over it again, then you're going to get a little bit darker color, right? So we can just flip that over again. And I'm just going to add more thicket. Okay, so it's pretty thin. It's going to dry pretty quickly, right? Okay. So I just want to deepen my corners a little bit more, but I'm just going to still use the thicket. Okay, just a little bit more deeper. So you get some nice variations. I'm just pushing down and picking up, pushing up and picking down. Okay, just to kind of darken those corners. And then you start to get into that area that you're happy. Again, very light, 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 light touches. Just to kind of blend in whatever paint you have left. I hardly have any paint left on my sponge now. And again, you give it a better view again. I always like to flip it back over because this is the way you're going to look at it, right? So I still have a light side on my sponge. And then if it's really wet, try not to go over it too much because you're just going to lift off that paint. And you can always add a bit more to it a little later if you feel like when you're done your design, you still want to add a little bit more darker color. You can always still add that around because there's going to be, oops, don't touch the top. There's going to be some shading that we're going to do around the candle as well. Okay, so I just kind of touched that top here by accident. But I think it's still going to be okay because a lot of the candles still going to be there. All right, so quick and easy background. So I bought one of these books at the Michaels, and this is a sketch paper, medium surface, 80 pounds it says. I never do understand these numbers here. 400 series. This is what I got. It's kind of thin and it's not it's not like the cardstock we were using, but it's still a little bit thicker, and it's great for practicing in, because I'm not going to keep these. You can see that the paint is warped, like once it gets wet, so it's not that thick that the cardstock is going to be good, but it's definitely great enough to practice on and remind yourself. If you have a little bunch of your practice strokes in a book like this, then you can always remind yourself, go back to the book and go, how did I do that? And so that's what I like about this book. And then of course I have my binder of all my practice sheets that I've made for you guys in the courses. Okay, so I'm just going to set that aside and find ourselves a nice clean page. Right. See if I can get a better view for you there. Yeah, so we're going to do some practice strokes. If you haven't done this before, and hopefully if you're not mastering it at the end of this paint project, it's a little bit quicker and not as baby step as my courses. I highly, highly, highly suggest you kind of look at those options of my practice courses. I have 5 courses, and they're all really geared to one step at a time. And I think they might really help you as well. And but yeah, I've got a couple different options available now to help you, and with the mentorship I'm definitely there for you anytime you have questions through your practice, and get you to help you master this, right? So we have some probably good paint that's on our plate from our background still, then we're just going to practice with that for now. So you can definitely make this a little bit darker or use a darker color when it comes to doing your leaves and your flowers and everything. But we're just going to do some basic practice strokes with our two-tone green, and then you can add a little bit of white into that just to brighten it up a little bit more. And that's why I like using the gray paper, because if you use white paper you can't see the light strokes, and if you use black paper it's almost too dark. So a happy medium for your practice is really really best for like the gray color. Definitely it's nice and contrasty if you want to do some designs on black paper, but for practicing I find that gray paper is better to see exactly what you're doing, and you get a little bit nicer coverage color without having to really work hard to cover that black up. Okay. So the first thing we've done is loaded up our brush, and we're going to make sure that our brush is all the way up to at least 2/3 of that chisel. And if it's not high enough, then what you got to do is really push and go slow and get that in there. Right? So you see a streak in there? That means I'm really pushed that paint up. So really I probably don't even have enough paint there. Right? But there is so much of having too much paint. Okay? So you can see that it's really slippery. It's not globby. Okay? And this is paper, so it's really going to suck up a lot faster than if you were going to practice on wax paper or plastic, or if you're painting on glass, it's going to be a lot easier. But when you're working on wood or paper or even canvases, sometimes the paper will suck up all the water. So just to get you going to warm up, I always suggest test your brush. Right? See how far that stroke can go with the amount of paint that you have on. So clearly I have some skimpy marks in there, so I can go and add more paint. And if you feel like you still need more slip, you could always add some medium. But I find that if you just add more paint, you're going to be good. And then sometimes we do have to go over it twice to really push into it. Okay, so I got a lot better coverage there, but I did have to go over it again. Okay, because it's paper, it's really going to be dry. Right? So when we do these little flowers, it's basically like a V. There are 5 petal flowers. Okay, that's in our course number 2. So you're starting over onto the right side. If you're left-handed, you might want to start over this way and work backwards. But if you're right-handed and the view of your camera, you can see me a lot better if I stay to the side. So again, I can see that I've got some dry spots. I'd rather go over that, a couple times to get it nice and smooth and not thick and lumpy, and then let that dry, and then I can always highlight it a little bit more after. So our flowers were done with white and citrus green. But again, like I said, we're just practicing, right? So we're going to put another V right there. And then we can put another V right here. Okay. So you've got your head, you got your arms, your two arms, and then we're going to put another stroke from here to here. So you got your 2 feet. So it's almost like, a little man. And you got your head, you got your arms, and you got your feet. Okay. So just for rough placement, sometimes I'll just kind of put that on there just so I see how much space it's going to take up. Now that I know that I'm going to be happy with the space, now I'm going to load up my brush really well and go over that stroke properly. So you're going to push up and your pivot point doesn't move, just the outside shell. Okay, and that gives you your teardrop. Okay, this is a U stroke. Okay, when your pivot point goes with your top, this is a teardrop. Okay, your pivot is not moving at the bottom. Okay, then when I do the other side, I like to start at the top, and now I have to pretend I'm a lefty. Okay, so it doesn't matter if you're right-handed or left-handed, you still got to practice both directions. Okay, because it really makes it look nicer when you follow the same look on each side of your flower, as opposed to trying to go like this all the way across. Okay, if you have to do that in the beginning, that's okay. Do whatever you need to do, but really try to force yourself to practice both directions. Okay? You could keep moving your paper around if that makes it easier for you too. I just did a big wall mural at a school, and believe me, that brick wall I couldn't flip upside down. So I definitely have, some time under my belt to practice doing these strokes in different directions so that I don't have to flip my paper upside down. I can do the up this way, up, sideways, upside down. So the more comfortable you feel to be able to do these strokes without moving your paper, you'll start to get a little bit more of a feel of dancing with your brush a little bit more. I find if you just keep doing the same thing and flipping it around, it limits your practice, right? Sure, in the beginning you might have to do that, right? And some people do it all the way around, and then all of a sudden you end up with a big, huge spot here. If you plan to do 5, then it doesn't really map you out properly, right? You could do 6 if you really want to, but then they're not, it is still a pretty flower. But if you try to map yourself out, do the top, one on each side, and then you can definitely try to space it out. Another little trick to space them out too is just do your star form, okay? And that'll guide you as well so that you know how to place them out, okay? And then when you go to do your strokes, then you know that you have to kind of put them in half again, right? Because you're going to start here. You want that to be in the middle and at the top, okay? So I'm definitely feeling like my paint needs a little help. So if you feel like you need a little floating medium, I want to add a little bit more white. I'd rather add a little bit more paint at a time than putting too much, because then, you waste it, right? All right. For our holly leaves, flip this around so you can see better. so the same thing we're going to do instead of U strokes. They're basically a bunch of inverted, like U stroke, real strokes. This is an inverted one where it's like a U that way, but we're going to do like a true U, like a happy face. Okay, and what you're doing is basically doing 2 of those for the side, right? And then if you know how to do a 1-stroke leaf, that's how you do your, so you're just doing a little bit of a U, and almost like looks like an R. Doesn't that remind you like almost like an R? So I'm just trying to give you some placements a little bit. And then again, you're going to go down and then make another point. Okay. So what I want you to do now is follow this stroke and go up and then up and then up and then out. Okay. So I put those placements in there in little pieces, but now I want you to go over them all in one to get that movement going. See how you have to learn how to move that brush to get those points of your, that's only the 1/2 of the leaf. Okay. So if it makes it easier for you, you can flip it upside down. Okay. So again, we're going to join our dark green to dark green. Okay. So I was a little globby there. Okay, so again, we're just going to do our 2 U's. All right, this is just a little trick to get you started, to get used to doing these little shapes, right? And then you can do a little U and then a 1-stroke leaf. Okay, and again, you're going to do the other side. You can add another one if you want. Okay. And then again, just to practice the movements, a bunch of little V's, little V's, little V's. Okay. This is huge and over exaggerated, but again, it's just enough to get you on that little dance. Okay, and then coming out. Okay, starting, you know, it's just like a 1-stroke leaf there, and then when you're finishing, it's more like a happy 1-stroke leaf. Okay, so now we broke down the kind of the leaf. So now we're going to do it in real time. Okay, and you don't want to make it too complicated. Don't add too many points. And then we're going to make them small too. So, you know, we don't have to use a 3/4 brush. We're using a big 3/4 brush right now. Okay, so we're starting with our 1-stroke leaf and pointing up, and then finishing with our 1-stroke leaf. Okay, so you really only have to do two humps. Okay. And then again, flip your project upside down. Shows you better for the, and then 2, and then I join. Okay. If there's any space that's not covered in the middle, I just kind of use the dark side of my flat brush and fill it in. Okay. And then later you can do a thing going through it. Okay. So this is being very, very light on your chisel. Okay. If your light is on the top of your brush, it's going to be more dominant. If you flip your brush around and you start with the dark at the top, it's going to be a little bit more darker. And it also depends on how much light you have on your brush too. I have a lot of white on here, so it's definitely taken over. And every time I do this little flick thing, it messes up your gradient. So you really should go back and create, you know, soften that out again before you do another little flick. So if you're doing a bunch of different leaves at the same time, you know, you're going to go like this and blend your color out and then flick and then flick. Okay? I know I'm not doing perfect flicks here, but just to kind of show you. And it's a very, very, very quick light. And I have my finger here as a pivot point. We call that like a fulcrum finger. And that's helping me stay balanced. And then I just flip it right out. Okay, so it's nice and wispy. So I'm not dragging. It depends on how long your leaf. If your leaf is really, really long, then of course. But you see how my baby finger didn't move? Okay, so I'm just kind of flipping it through. If you feel like you want to use like a liner brush to do your little veins and your stems, then you can do that too as well. Okay. So depending on if your background is light or dark, sometimes we do it where the dark is on the outside. Okay. And again, you can go over it twice. There's no law saying that you can't go over it twice. Okay. And then when I do it the other way, you see how I'm actually, because I don't want to move my paper this time, I want to show you how I don't move my paper. Okay. And then it's a little bit dry there. But this is only paper, right? Only practice. So don't kill yourself right now about coverage. Okay. Because when we get to our canvases, you can definitely go over it again. And if you want to put 3, put 3. Okay. And then often I usually end up messing the top. So sometimes you do have to go and kind of fix this stroke again. Your under one is always the trouble. And then you can blend out if you overlap too much of your color. Okay, so you can see this one's really nice and whimsical, kind of. Right, and I really hump this over like a one-stroke leaf. This one here is a little bit more into the V and V. So this one's a little bit easier to start up in the beginning if you just want to do that. But then if you want to make it a little bit more advanced, you can definitely hump it over. It gives it a little bit more of a sideways direction. Okay, so how do you guys feel about your poinsettia leaves now? You think you can try them? Have I lost you on the leaves? Okay, so basically the pine needles are the same thing as all these little flicks that I was showing you here. So we're just doing flick, 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 flick. So the one thing that I like about this design is if you're not feeling comfortable with your flicks, with your leaves, you can definitely start your leaf and then do all your little pine needles and really get comfortable with your pine needles. And then by the time you finish a bunch of these, you're going to be ready to put that vein in the leaf, no problem. And you can see some of them I've made darker on the outside because I felt like it needed the contrast up here. But then here we're working in the darker background, so I flipped it over and I made the bottom ones light on the outside. Okay, does that make sense? So it's good to practice both, right? And there's, like I said, there's no real rule to it. It depends on your background. I felt like if I did it too dark, you're not going to see them very good. Up here, we definitely have really lots of white here, so we needed that contrast to really help to pop out these white little flowers. Okay. And then these are just little easy dots, and then we can do some curlicues at the end. And then I'm going to break down the candle for you, no problem. It's basic painting, and then we're going to show you how to do the shading around it and to really pop that out, no problem. So when I go to show you the certain areas, we're going to bring this paper back out and I'll show you those areas then so that I don't overwhelm you too much right now. So right now I just want you to concentrate on the flowers and the leaves. These candles are not hard as you think. I'm gonna, by the time we finish doing our placement for these and start practicing some of our leaves, this should be fairly easy for you. Okay. So we're gonna do some reverse teardrops for these guys. You think you can handle these little drops? They're very much like dewdrops too. Mute, mute. What do you think, Maria? Dorothy?
Getting there.
Yeah, you feel okay about the holly leaves?
One I do is good. The next one I do looks awful. The next one I do is good.
Well, the nice thing too, if you don't like anything on your canvas, if right away, if you don't like it, just wipe it off and then
Yeah.
redo it again. You know, don't wait too long deciding if you like it or not, because it's pretty easy to erase it off your canvas. As long as everything else is dry that you're painting on, it's so easy to just erase it and try and do it again. And sometimes I'll even erase part of it. Like, it's kind of hard to show you on paper, but if this was really wet and I went in a little bit too far out that I didn't like, I'll get some water and a clean brush really quickly, and I'll kind of just erase where I went too big.
Yeah.
And then when I go and stroke it again, I can fix it. As long as you're quick enough to do it while it's wet, you can kind of erase things and make it smaller. And then if you want to make it bigger, again, as long as it's a little bit wet, you can go over it again and then push it out a little bit more and then make it a little bit bigger if you choose bigger. But if it's too big, then definitely you can go in and kind of erase it quickly and go, oh, that's way too big. And then take your good brush that you're using and restroke that area again. Okay, so it's not too much stuck there if you act quickly enough. Oh yeah, I guess we should show you a poinsettia quickly. All right. So I'm going to pop in a new plate here because usually our backgrounds take over our plate. But if you have room, this gives you a lot more room to do your double loading. And I like engine red. It's a little bit deeper red. And I like to use a bit of berry wine as well when I do the red version. And then what I do for highlight is I add yellow. So moon yellow or daffodil yellow. Moon yellow is pretty dark, which I like for this because it gives it a little bit deeper highlight. Okay, so I'm going to show you again with a 3/4 brush. But we can definitely use a 16 or a 12 on our design, okay? I'm just using a big, huge guy so you guys can see really good. And just our basic ones we'll do quickly. Like, you know, there's always ways of flipping leaves and making things look more advanced. Okay, so what we're doing is blending in our dark red and our engine red. And then over here, I'm going to side load a little bit of that yellow. So just a titch. You don't want it down into the very far, just the very edge of it, okay? And then when I need more red, I'll come back over here and deepen my dark area again. And then I'll just come in and pop up a little bit of a lighter color. So you're really not ever letting it get really light because you're always going to come back into this area. Okay. So when we do poinsettias, there's a lot of layers, and you can do 2 layers for simple. You can do 3 if you really want to make it look legit. So again, we're doing 1 here, okay, and I'm just doing it very lightly for placement. And then we can do 1 here, and we're leaving a little bit of a space, okay. And then your arm. Okay, so if you know how to do our traditional leaves, okay, and I'm definitely can always make these a little bit wider. I'm just trying to give myself a marker. Okay, you can just put lines if you want, but I like doing a little bit of the shape that I'm looking for. Okay, so this is going to give me room to put a little bit smaller ones in between. And I can't remember right now, there's 5 or 6 petals in the main, but again, nobody really counts them when you have that many layers. Okay, so now that I'm kind of got an idea of where I want to put them, now I'm going to start my stroke, And really, this is not a wiggle or anything. They're really smoother strokes. Okay, so it's almost like a bumpy look, like you're starting off with the size of the brush, and then you're really pushing down to take advantage of it, and just a ever so soft little bit of a slide. Okay, and then you're pulling up to make it a little bit skinnier at the end. Okay. Then you can come back down and then make it a little bit wider. If you're not getting a highlight look and you need to do 2 coats, I don't worry about my highlights. Then I'll go over it again, and then the second time when I pick up a little bit of that more highlight, then it'll fix that look a little bit more. Okay, so for me, I'm a perfectionist. I am a big nut for making sure I get perfect coverage. I find that I like to do things a little bit thinner, and I'd rather do 2 coats than too gloppy of a coat that I can't control. All right, so that's my motto. All right, so again, just a little bit of a slide. And you can do this all in one stroke if you feel like you've got enough paint there, but usually you have to go over it twice for sure. Okay. So no gloppies. Okay. I'm not worried about the yellow right now. Now I can add a little bit of a highlight if I want to go over it twice. But I always find that you got to make sure you like this back layer before you move on to the next layer, because you can't fix things as easy without other little tricks. You know, there's lots of tricks, and we can just kind of highlight the edges a little bit more with a smaller brush. But when you're first starting out, there's, could be overwhelming, to add too many advanced tricks. And that's why I can't say enough about my basic 5 classes that I have, intro to one stroke, because it's going to take you to that level by the time you're done all 5 courses. And I've got 2 ladies here that can vouch for me right now, right, Dorothy and Maria?
Yep.
They have taken my full program, and they can tell you themselves how they like it. Maybe to have a little bit of a review from the girls. And you can't learn it all in one night. Right? Okay, so basically, like, it's a really thin kind of, you can make them a little bit skinnier too if you want. The trick about doing nail art too in a small little brush, half the time I don't even use the whole chisel of the brush. I only use like the half the brush, and I do some of my strokes that I'm able to just kind of wisp that in, and you'll see my back end never touches the canvas, and I can really make little tiny strokes with a huge brush. That takes some practice, right? Or you'd have to use like a 4 on a nail. But yeah, once you start to be able to manipulate your brush, you can make them smaller with the same size. Okay.
What I found with your classes, those 10 classes, was that even though I've been painting for a couple of years, it really fine-tuned. There's something about watching the way you paint that I could slip right into.
Oh, nice.
It's so much better than just trying to do it on my own. So, yeah, I'd recommend it.
Definitely.
Thank you guys. You guys, oh my God, you don't know how much I would just squeeze you to death. Big, huge hugs. Oh, yeah, love all the support. Alrighty. So again, you're just trying to make them a little bit smaller than the first layer. And like I said, it is a little bit trickier with the reds, to try to make them stand out from each other. Okay, so you're just basically now in between each one, right? Give them all little directions, like little points to go. You know, at first, you know, you're trying to just make them the shape, but then once you feel comfortable, you know, try to make your little points, you know, kind of a little more whimsical. You know, where you're leaving your tip out a little bit to a side, and then, you know, some will be this way, like this one will come, you know, a little bit down. You know, show you a strong yellow. Okay, so you can give them a little bit of life, right? And then sometimes I'll leave it into it at the bottom there. Like I don't follow it out. You have to kind of end it a little bit before the point to kind of stay with that direction. So I made that quite yellow, but I'm hoping it stands out a little bit more. And you definitely want the second layer to be a little brighter than your back layer. So if you don't put too many highlights in your back layer, that's okay. It definitely, if you put them in your top layer here, then it'll stand out a little bit more. Okay. And then again, when you get to the front, here, if you want to add just the smallest amount of white with your yellow, just to kind of brighten that up still, just a little tiny bit more. Okay, so it's not white, but it is a little brighter, right? You don't want very much white with that yellow. And then you just make a couple really small ones. This is a little bit wet still from behind here. And just little ones. So you just do 3. Like I said, you can do pink, you can do, I did do the red and the white with just a tiny bit of yellow on mine, and it made it a little bit more pinky burgundy kind of color with the berry wine. So it made it a little bit not as red, like orange red. It made it more like berry pinky red. If you Google pictures of poinsettias, they do come out with different colors, and then the white ones too are a little trickier to do. But basically, that's just the citrus green. See if I can make you a little quicker one. So you're just putting a very, very little bit of citrus green, but more white, like you're doing 2/3 to 1/3 gradient. Okay, so you're only doing a very little bit of green, but mostly white. Okay, and this is very similar to irises or lilies, right? Very similar. Okay, again. Try to do this one a little quicker. It's basically the same thing, it's just different colors, right? And we can do 2 of them in our design tonight, like one red, one green. Or if you want to keep all the little flowers white and green, and then have them pop up nicely with the red poinsettia. There's so many options, you know, that's the nice thing about designing. Okay. And then I always like to leave them dry a little bit before I put my centers. And just a little guy. So you should always practice how big can I make that stroke with that brush, and how small can I make that stroke with that same brush. And these are for the reasons right here. Okay, you can definitely take advantage of your brush, trying to make that as big as you can and small as you can with the same brush. If you feel like you're having a hard time with that, downsize one size, and then you can make your little guys a little bit smaller. Okay. And then with the white one, you can I just take the back of my brush a lot of times and just kind of dot in a little bit of craziness there. And then sometimes with the white ones, you'll see a lot of more red dots. I'm just going by memory here. I'm not even getting any reference pictures. Okay, so you can definitely do it like that. And then you can definitely add some, I make it a little bit brighter green in there. Right, just kind of little dots. And then top it off with some white ones. You know, obviously a lot neater. Okay, we're just kind of playing right now. Okay. You could definitely add more shading to things. I always like to try to advance you, right? And when you're doing some side loading, what we're doing is we're using some floating medium and just one color fade, right? So you're picking up floating medium on one corner and you're gonna pick up some dark color, like berry wine. And when you do your gradient on your plate, you see I'm only getting one color, okay? So this is like a little trick that we do sometimes if we want to add a little bit of more shading underneath something to make it stand out, or around the outside of the candle. So you're gonna have your candle, right? And we're gonna take some dark green after, and we're gonna just shade just slightly outside with the green around the candle so that it kind of stands out. Okay, so you guys, hope you know what I mean by that. Okay, got a little bit of an illusion there. And then just kind of giving that shading with the thicket around the candle will make the candle pop out a little bit more. All right, so just enough to just give you some insight of what we're going to do. Alrighty, we're back from our little break. Our canvases are nice and dry, and hopefully you guys are feeling more confident with a little bit of practice there before we start on from our papers. Alright, so if you have a little bit of chalk, that's always a nice little tool too to get things started for you. And I got a pink one here. I think that'll show up good for you. Okay. So about, you know, about in the middle, maybe just a little bit off center a little bit. Okay. And then it was probably about 4 or 5 fingers from the top and about halfway, I'd say. About halfway. Can you see that? Okay, so that just gives you a bit of a marker where the bottom one goes. So our candle, just start off with a basic square, right? And then we're just going to make a little bit of a humpy top. And you probably can hardly see. Maybe my purple chalk will work better. Oh, there we go. You can see the purple better, right? We got all kinds of colors of chalk. Dollar store. Okay, so basically that's what we're doing. It's like a little oval, you know, a little circle, half circle at the top, right? And then you can count for your little drip, right? So we're just gonna make this all white right now, for now, okay? Then we're gonna make one a little bit smaller. Okay? And then this one here can be just a little bit taller. And they're just gonna overlap each other. Okay, so you want them to be about the same amount of space on each side. So if you feel like you want to bring this over, just erase your chalk, and that'll give you a little bit more of an idea of where they're going to go. Okay, so we're going to start off with just some white. And you can put a tiny little bit of licorice or pure black, or if you have a darker gray, you can use that too. This is just a very subtle. We're not going to be using black per se to do the detail. It'll look gray when you're done, when you finish blending. Okay, so I'm not going to use too big of a brush. You can use a 16. Okay. So I'm going to start off by just putting the white and giving it a good base coat. get some good coverage there. And you're going to go right over and paint all the candles at the same time. We'll separate them later with some shadowing. And we can always add more drips in there too. So a little bit of a circle there for that guy. And then just straight down. And you don't even have to make a very thin straight line at the bottom. You can just even whisk this out because you're going to overlap all those leaves right on top of it. So you're not even going to see the base of that candle. Okay, and then the outside of that guy. Okay, not too thick so it dries fast. Okay. And so just to remind ourselves. Okay, so we also have another little drip to the side on this guy too. So you can kind of make that little teardrop kind of drippy look there. Okay, so we're just going to let that dry. So straight up and down. And then just a slight curve. Then we're going to pick up some burnt umber. I have it in my little thing. We don't need a lot of burnt umber either, just a very little bit. Okay, because you're really only using them for the stems of the pine needles. So a lot of times when we're doing placement, we can use our hands as a guide, you know, because a lot of times, you know, nature, it works out that your fingers can be a guide too. But basically, I kind of spread them out a little bit, right? So put two, you can see my fingers right there, my 4 fingers and my thumb. When I did this trick to do this, and then I put a couple more down at the bottom. Okay, so you can just kind of throw your little ticks in. So one's going to go there, and then, you know, you can do 2 there, and then maybe 1 into the candle there. And it's just trying to give you a placement a little bit. And we're waiting for this white to dry because I want to go over it and finish some details on there, right? So we're just making some plans, and then try to leave some space because you want that to come down. And you don't want this to go all the way down, but close to the bottom. Okay. Maybe I'm a little bit too close to you guys. I'll back up a little bit. Okay. And then one over on this side I put. Put this right here. Can you guys see that there? Okay, so this should start to be a little drier, a little bit tacky still. You can take your blow dryer to it if you wanted to dry it a little bit faster. All right, so our little bit of licorice. You don't want to see the big mess I made. I have a watered down black that I was using to wash something. It was an empty bottle and I just wanted to get the rest of the black out. And of course I picked that black bottle instead of the right new one. There's a little oops moment there, getting too excited again. Okay, so now we're going to load up our white again. Load it right up, really good. Okay. And then side swipe this black just a little tiny touch, just enough to pick up, just enough to say that you're touching that black. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is go back up to our top, and we're going to do that stroke again. So at the same time, we're going to give it a second coat, but we're going to do some shading at the same time. So you see just that very small line. And if it looks too dark, just go over it a couple times, it'll soften it. Okay. So you got your first one. Still got to play with my camera a little bit, eh? All right. Okay. And then now we're going to just go slightly lower and make that rim. Okay. And that's going to give you the front view of your candle. Now we're going to come back and add more shading to this. This is just the basic shape. And the next way to get it to look like it's really a rim of it inside, we have to wait for this part to dry, and then we can go in and tweak another little bit of a shading on the other side of this line. Okay. I'll just make that a little bit more stronger there. And then remember your little drip mark? You're just going to go tip it in front of it so that you can make a straight line coming down. And you're going to stop right at the top of that guy. Okay. And then this guy, make that wall. Okay. Again, we don't want to go all the way down. We want to stop. So again, remember I said you can erase things? So if you go down too low, take a wet, grab your little towel, blot it, and then stop your point. Okay. If anything's a little bit dirty, you can erase some of your chalk there too when you've got a wet brush. So now we're going to do the second candle. Right, a little bit of a curve right in front. Pick up more, mostly white. Keep it in white, and then you can determine where you want your third one to be the top of. And we can make that one a little bit fatter. Sometimes when we have 3 candles, we have different widths of them. Okay, and then again, you're going to close that circle nice and wide, right? Like, don't. This one might be a little bit too skinny. You know, depending on how, are you looking at it completely sideways, or are you looking at it a little bit of a top view? Okay, so you see how it didn't have very good cover, so I just chipped my little white part there in there, just to add a little bit more white paint in there. But we are going to go back over this again on the inside, okay? But not right now. Okay, so again, we're just going to go right over that. And give them a wall. And then if it's easier for you, you can tip your canvas sideways. And then now you're going to just go in on a little bit of an angle. Oh, you can't see me. Get my hand in there. So just go in on a little bit of an angle. Don't go straight up because then you're going to end up getting white on a nice gradient there. So just tip a little bit on an angle and just really ever so lightly pencil that little tip in. Okay, and then find a straight and then come down. Always fix that a little bit more. Really put pressure on it. You see how I got to sneak that one in there, right? And then you can flatten out and straighten out. Okay. I don't know what I like to do it better. I think I like to do it straight up and down, I guess. So again, you're going to go on a little bit of an angle and pull down. You can always touch things up a little bit later too if you feel like you want to fix this corner. And then another way of doing it too is going right up to the corner and then kind of like you're almost like what I was showing you earlier about the holly leaf. You know, you're kind of doing that little point and just kind of wisp it in there just to fix that corner. I learned most of my tricks fixing things. Yeah, definitely. Things always happen. So if you're not getting a good slide, add a little bit of floating medium if you need it. But just keep adding more white paint for sure. Within a little bit, you need to go straight there. So a little bit globby there. It's okay, just tip your brush so you're only using the corner and just kind of like flip flop all the way down now and kind of give your candle a little bit more coverage. Flip flop, add a little bit more white. You're not really touching the gray, you're just flip flopping that white in there just to give it a bit more coverage. Right over my little gray spot. Good. Go slow, take your time. Okay. So now we're going to downgrade to a smaller brush. So if you're using a 16, go down to a 12. If you're using a 12, go down to a 10. Okay. And then we're going to basically do the same things, load up our brush really good, and then just go into that puddle and pick up just a, if you're making a mess now, you want a cleaner little spot, move over to the other side of the puddle. Okay, and then that way you can only pick up very, very little bit, and then that way keeping it nice and white. Okay, because I had lost myself there, so that's quite common if you're not really being focused on exactly being on the same spot. And I'm in the air right now, I'm not on a table, so it's very easy to lose your blending spot, and I have to keep moving down and down and down so that I stay white, right? Because if I go up too high, my white won't be white anymore. So I have to keep pushing myself down the plate. So I'm running out of room now, so another way of doing that is just kind of going over on the other side. So now we're going to do the circles. We're going to do some shading on the inside. Okay, so remember, just a very little bit of black. I almost have too much black. Knock it off. I'm zoomed up on you, so I lost it. So you can knock it off, right? Load up more white, and then move down your pile a little bit more. Because really you don't want the black. You just want a soft gray on the edge. And then go over that again. And we're going to make our little circles now. So you're going to go up and around like in a U. And then you're going to go down. Flip your brush around the other way. And you're following that line. And you're going to do your little circle inside your circle. All right, see that already? Looks like the top now. Okay, so if you lost your definition of your line, if you're black, you could always go, if everything's happy in here and you don't want to go over to make a nicer, little stronger rim, you know, you can go back underneath it and fix it this way now. And just go in there and touch it up a little bit if you feel like you don't have a little bit of a line going on. Okay, so you're doing like a double loading, double-sided gradient. Okay, so we're going to go around again, circle, flip your brush around, and then now we're going to go down and around. Okay, make sure you got good coverage. Nice and smooth, not gloppy. It's whatever you're comfortable with, right? You just got to try to find the best way to do that stroke. And then now the inside of this guy. And definitely, because I'm picking up such little amounts of black, I don't want more black. I definitely don't want more black. So I'm just going to put a tiny little bit of floating medium in there just so that my black will blend a little bit more. More translucent. So as your paint is starting to sit on your palette, it does start to dry out. Oh my God, I've got a trick for you guys. I found these, I thought they were for watercolors. They are actually little mist sprayers. Can you guys see this? You can fill them up. I got one fill here already. Dollar store, $2 for 3 of them. And if you go and take a little break and you want to leave your plate, I gotta back you up. This is so cool. I have to show you this. Okay, let's back up. There we go. Okay, so you've left your palette there for a little while. It's starting to dry. You could add a little floating medium in this and kind of activate things a bit if it's too thick. Some colors are really thick out of the bottle, so I pre-soften them a little bit so they're a little bit more easier to blend. If they're too thick here, then I find I have to blend more here. So I water it down a little bit with some medium sometimes to make it the right consistency so that I can just go ahead and dip and then go blend and paint, right? So if this is really, really thick, then definitely this weight is really nice. I don't even have to do that. But I'm just saying, sometimes you might notice certain colors come out really, really thick. Or your paint has been sitting on the plate for a long time and it's starting to get thick. You want to go have lunch. There's 2 things you can do. You can put another plastic plate on top of it, and that'll help to keep it wet longer. It won't dry up on you while you go take your break. Or this little sprayer, okay? And it's just a mister. So what you do is you find the front, and you just mist it. Just a couple of mists, just enough to see where you can see that the spray is on there just ever so lightly. And you can leave that plate now for like 20 minutes, half an hour, go have a lunch. Come back to your project. And then that'll just help to keep your paint moist and not dry up on you. There is another wet palette system that I can always show you guys too. We used to do that for nails because we're painting so tiny. And it's using wax paper to put your paint on, and then you're using a J-cloth. You dampen a paper towel or a J-cloth, and you put that underneath the wax paper, and that'll sometimes keep your paint damp longer as well. But I just find that it makes it almost too wet, and the wax paper starts to get dirty, and then it starts to get too runny, and I can't control my paint when it's too wet. I'd rather add medium when I need it than find a paint that's too runny, and that's why we love the folk art. The multi-surface especially is my favorite, and because it's thick enough. You can thin it down if you want it, but if you have a paint that's too thin, there's nothing you can do to really thicken it up unless you want to let it sit out for half an hour before you use it. So I just wanted to share these cute little mists. They are so cute. I'm not sure what else you could use these for. Maybe on a hot day. menopausal. Hey, maybe that is it. Definitely this, like, I don't know about your dollar stores. This is a Dollarama company that we have here in Canada, and they're called ultra fine mist sprayers. So they're not gonna really spray it hard, like, you know, as if a spray bottle would. Okay, very, very, very fine mist. So I thought I would just kind of play around with that idea there, and finish the bottom of this guy. And that might help you keep your paints a little bit moist. If you want to take a break, I'll put it away. All right, so there we go. We're finishing the top of that candle. Okay. And then now what I did too was just right in front of where I put the wick, I did like a little U shape just to give it a little shadow of where the and try to make that just a little touch darker so it stands out. And you're gonna just use, you can use a smaller brush if you want, or just use the corner of your brush. Okay, I didn't even really use any white there, so I'm just doing the corner of my brush, right about, you know, not half, a little bit lower than half. Okay, just a very light skimp there for the shadow of the wick. Alright, and then what we did next was we started concentrating on some of these drips. Okay, so here at the top, I tried to put in a little space actually, so you can white out a tiny little bit of that line. And I'll zoom myself back up for you guys again. All right, so we're just going to erase that little line right in a small little spot. Okay, and what we want to do is from the inside, we're going to follow that little circle and make a little opening there. See that? So it looks like a little bit of a hollow. Too dark. It's almost too dark. It looks like it's kind of melting outside, right? And then I did the same thing. Oh, this one I just kind of did it all, the drip on the outside. Okay, so I lost some of my white in this drip, so you can just put that back in there. Make that a little bit darker. Okay. And again, I did the shadow on the outside. Okay, so we're going to add that later when we have no more white. Okay, so we're just trying to make spots for it. And then I did one in the front here. So again, we're just going to erase a little tiny bit there. And we can go back in and just try to follow that in. And then make a little hump over it. Okay. Now the front one, you're making a U shape. You're using the shadow. Okay. You're going to go over your area here. Try not to. Okay. So just whisk that back in there. Right. So you don't see where you're starting and stopping. If you go very, very light touch on in the starting stroke, and then slightly put more pressure, okay, then you can come down and you're going to make an illusion of a drip. See that? It's all about shading. And then you can just take the corner of your white and just kind of make it look a little bit brighter in that drippy area. Okay, something like that. Okay, and then we did another drip off to the side here. Right. A little bit of a drag mark, light drag mark, and then off to the side. Sometimes it is easier to do just with some floating medium and some, make it like a gray color. And then that way you don't have the white in it. If that's easier for you. How I kind of playing around with it. I already have no paint left on my brush now. So now I'm just going to go into some floating medium. Okay, whatever's left on my brush, I just want to dampen it with some floating medium. And I'm just going to make some strokes just here and there down the side to make it look like the illusion of roundness, right? And you're not going straight across, just a little bit of an angle. And it's just done with like really watered down whatever's left in your brush paint. If you want to use a little bit more of a bluey kind of shadowy color, you can use blue, like a soft blue with the gray a little bit. Water sometimes is made with blue. I think I might have used the blue. Looking at my original now, I'm looking at it going, it looks more blue. 2 years ago, remember now. So yeah, just you can play around with different colors, add a little bit of blue into that. Gray. So we got a soft gray blue. I'm liking it in the black. Okay, and then the little whirls, just like I said, whatever's left on your brush, you really just want them very, very faint, just to kind of give it a little bit of a splash. And fix areas that you don't like. The back is definitely going to look a little tiny bit darker than the front. It's further away, right? And like I said, you can always play around with the top of these a little bit later when they dry. If you're not happy with them, we're going to add a little bit more tweaking to them. But the gist of it's done, and now we can start layering our leaves on top of the candle. So when we did have our brown out, I never did add our little wicks, and basically it's just a little line. And then later on we'll add the flames. Just a little bit thicker at the base. And then just a little thin at the top. Okay. Alright, so now we can pick up, if you still have thicket, you can definitely make these a little bit brighter with some sap green. If you don't have sap green, then you can make it with some cobalt. Just put a little tiny bit of cobalt. You can put just the smallest little dab of black in there too if you really want to, but it's a little brighter with some blue. Fresh foliage, that was the one that I used in the background last time. Every time I do it, I swear they're always different. Right? Okay, so I'm just using a 12. And I'm going to just put a little bit of white into that green. So we're going to start off with the, if you paint it over your brown, you could always put that back in there again. I just grab whatever brush. Okay, so what I usually like to do is start at the base of our pine needles, okay, and just flick, flick, flick. Oh, there we go. Got you quite close. Okay, so I'm using the dark side of the brush at the base, and I'm flicking out. Just flick out. Almost up, but almost a little bit out. So you're like between 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock. If you think this is 12 o'clock, then you can try to just flick up. And you can see some, you might come out a little bit. Some you go straight up. Okay, you'll see that you'll start to run out of green. And so you just keep adding, adding, adding. And I kind of leave some spaces, right? Because first we're going to do it with all the dark. Okay, and then I'm making my general shape. Right? Then I go in with, flip my brush to the other side, and then I start doing some lighter. And then you can pick up a little bit more white to brighten it up. My head's not in the way, I hope. Okay, and just kind of play with them with your highlight in between. And that kind of gives them a different look with a variety of colors. If it's starting to look too dark, just add a little bit more light. If it's starting to look too light, then flip your brush around and start flicking with your dark and add a little bit more dark in the area that you're not happy. So this guy's going to layer a little bit on top of that guy. Again, just kind of leave spaces in the beginning. And then I'm trying to go up. So it kind of makes them look nice, eh? And I'm holding my wrist here for a pivot point because I find it went really, really high. Yeah, and you got a little crazy. Just hurry up and wet your brush and erase it down a little bit. Okay, nothing's ever a problem. The first ones I just want to do dark, so I'm not worried too much about the white on my brush. Then I go in and flip it around, and then I add a little bit of white when I'm flipping it around to do the white, the lighter version. So then that was a little brighter than the original green. Right? Lightens things up. Because you'll start, if it's wet on wet, you're going to start mixing with the previous two, right? So you'll get it, it'll be a little bit lighter. And you can always put the odd front one too, right? A little bit in front. So they look like they're not just 2 degrees. So you got some strokes that are coming straight up the middle. And if you can't see them, that's when I add a little bit more white. So then that way when I stroke again, then it stands out a little bit more. Does that make sense? So that you're still kind of seeing the 3 different colors of in the design. You're seeing the dark, you're seeing the medium, and you're seeing the light. A dirty, not really bright white, but it's like a dirty green, dirty white green. So that just gives it a little bit more pop on your final little hooks that you pop in front. So keep going and do all your the same way. Citrus green with the sap. Then when I'm doing my blending, I do my citrus green. Sorry, I didn't show you my plate maybe. Right? I blend those 2 colors together. Then I add just a bit of white just to lighten it up a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so then I'm doing my strokes with the dark first. I don't mind to repeat. Keep asking if you're not getting it. Right? So I'm doing my dark first. Flick, flick, flick with my dark. Then I'll turn my brush around and then I start flicking with light, but there's not a lot of contrast there. So that's when I just pick up a tiny, tiny little bit of white and then I start flicking with some white on the tip and stand out just a little bit more. If it's looking too dark or too light, then I'll go back and flick in a few dark ones in there. So you can go back and forth until you're happy with the look. Okay? So if you created something too light, you feel like there's just not enough contrast in there, then just break it up with a few more dark ones on top. So that you're really playing with the color. Getting lots of light, dark, and medium colors. Okay, so this one can be a little bit smaller. Sometimes I don't even blend the white in my plate. I just pick up just the tiniest amount on my brush on the corner, and then I start working it. And if it's a little bit globby there, just kind of go over it. Pick up a little bit of dark sometimes. See, I'd even do it with the dark sometimes. I'll just pick up just the smallest amount on the corner of my brush. I didn't even blend it. I'm just using it. Okay? Because sometimes blending it, you're not getting enough on the end. And you really need a lot on the end to kind of flick up. So sometimes that helps to give you just that little, you blend, then you just kind of reinforce that little bit of dark, and then you can reinforce that little bit of light. You see that? With the light on the end. Okay, and then we can do these. I like seeing 3 colors in things, right? There we go. That's because I got my zoom on. Thank you, Claudia, though. Keep an eye on me. Okay, and kind of giving it little spaces so that way when I come in with the lighter, you see the dark and you can see the light. And then just to pop it up a little bit, I'll add just a little bit of white, and that'll make them look like they're even closer, right? Just a few here and there. Okay. They're looking too light. Flip it around. It's okay to make them all look a little different. Okay. So you're visualizing how to put a vein in a leaf now? Getting lots of practice on same technique, right? Just wisping them in there. Okay. All right. I'm just going to cover a little tiny bit of that brown, but not all of it. You still want to see little peaks of that brown stem in there. Okay, so you can still use the 12 if you want for our holly berry leaves. Okay, if you're making, you lost your gradient, sometimes it's just good, just rinse out your brush and start over. Okay. Just dry your brush pretty good. Don't leave it too waterlogged. Dampen it into your towel a few times, so then that way it's not too wet. Because I think that's part of our problems too. We end up leaving our brushes in our water too long, and then they get really waterlogged, and then it makes our paint really watery. So if you remember how that brush was when it was brand new, like just dry, and then you used it the first few times, it was really good. And then now, you know, if it's too wet from being in the water, then that doesn't help. Okay, so my first one that I'm going to do is just right in between these guys, so then we have a little bit of candle showing in between is my goal. I should back up a little bit, but I'm liking that you guys can see it close up too. A little bit of a wake up, and then right up to the top. Okay, so it's a little bit of the easier one. If you want to try and get a little bit more wave into it, okay, then you're just going to put a little bit more pressure and then pop up like the one stroke. Can you see the difference? So start with it, whatever's easy for you. If you feel comfortable with putting that little bit in and then pressure and put it in there, then try it. It just gives it a little bit more advanced look. But definitely baby steps, right? Okay. Then I'm going to flip this around to make it easier, or even upside down if you have to. Okay. And you can see the coverage is not the greatest. Like if you see, I can still see through my color a little bit. Where are you? Wee. Too close. Okay, it's a little bit washy still. I'll let that dry. Okay, make sure it's not too globby in the middle. And then I'll go over it again later when it's dry a little bit. Okay, so now I want to concentrate on my light green, staying following that line. So you're kind of hugging it. You're always going to go back and brace that line of light green with the other light green. So here you can go forward, right? A little bit of pressure, forward, back, here, and you're just kind of following the that line there. And you see how I made a little bit of a mess? I'm not perfect, guys, honest. Okay? I make messes sometimes too. Just erase it. Okay? And then if you have a little bit of a bare spot, just fill it in. Okay? So now I'm going to go and put another one in there. And I laid this one a little bit on an angle going in over this one. Okay. So, gotta find the most comfortable way of doing this sometimes, right? So, sideways a little bit. I'm gonna start down a little bit lower than this guy. And I'm gonna try and put that in there. And so it kind of leans over. Maybe this is looking a little bit dark, so I could have flipped this around and made this light on the outside. I always think about that. Is it standing out? You know? Okay, so this one I made 3. And not because I plan to, just sometimes it ends up that way. So they can look a little bit different. So up and up and up. And just let that dry. Okay, I can lighten that up a little bit more and make better coverage in my next stroke. But I have 5 of these guys to do, so why fight with the one? Just keep moving on. Okay, so this one here, I'm going to turn my brush around and I'm going to make it kind of in between here, right? So up and pressure up and pressure down. Okay. And then over here, I'm just trying to be out of your way as the angle. Okay, so again, I gotta concentrate on trying to be tight because that'll be how you can make it skinny, right? If you stay really tight to your, right? And then a lot of times you go over your area a little bit by accident. You can always fix things. Sorry if I got off again. And then one more here. Point, And then I'm going to try it this way. I don't have my hands in the way. White, white. And then turn your brush a little bit to get it down there. So this one's probably dry now, right? By the time you get back to it. So it's very easy. You don't need a lot of green. Like, look at what's missing. See, I like a lot of the green that's there. It's just the outside is not done very well. So I'll concentrate on the dark, and sometimes I'll even pick up a little bit more dark on the edge if I have to fix my perimeter, the outside of it. So you can see if you follow it very slowly again, you're going to get a much better coverage the second time. That's just the way I do things, folks. I get my success that way. Donna, I guess she's always been in a hurry and wants to get it all done in no time. I like to enjoy myself. I like to really see, you know, I'm a perfectionist, I guess, in a way. I guess we all are in a way. And if it's too gloppy in there, just kind of smooth it out. And try to take some of that thickness out. Okay. And then you just quickly go over your leaves. It's a lot quicker to do your second coat, but you just got to concentrate on staying on that same line. So I didn't put any white in this one. I stayed with just the true sap and I'm going to make that one very pointy today. Okay, so I just add a little bit more of the light green, just so I can really enforce that edge. And then you'll get better coverage. If you're getting streakiness, then I just, no more paint, just go over it again, smooth it out. Okay, just go over it while it's still wet. Some pressure and smooth it out. See how many times I've gone over this without adding more paint? Because I didn't want that streakiness. I want a nice smooth look. Sometimes those streaks are nice, but sometimes we don't want them either. I want it nice and smooth. Up and over. A little bit of blending there. You still see me there? Keeping an eye on me? Holler. Like I said, I'd rather put two thin coats than put a real gloppy coat that I'm still not liking, and then I gotta go over it again, and then I can't go over it again because it's so gloppy and thick, and it's dried and it's bumpy, and you know. So this way, the smoother I can keep things, the more I can, you know, fix it. Yeah, I'm just going to over all these strokes now. Okay. Again, sometimes I just kind of float in a little bit more color if I feel like it's not dark enough. Right? You don't have to always go over it 100 times either. You just kind of pencil it in. I had drawing on my brain lately. And I did my wolf. Still in my mind. Okay, so now I will pick a little tiny bit of white up now because I want those veins to stand out just a little bit, so you're just lightening up that green just a little bit brighter. Okay, so then when you go through the dark, right, you're going to put a little bit of pressure and try to keep my hand out of the way for you to see. You don't want it looking white. If it's too light, then that's not good either. A little bit outside the leaf and pull through. If you're afraid to do this, make sure your leaf is dry so you can erase it. Okay, that's one thing I usually will do in the beginning when I wasn't sure of what I was doing. Then I would just wait till it's dry a little bit so I can always erase it. So you're always going to put the dark in the areas that are dark on the outside. Okay, a little bit more pressure in the base. And then you're always going to put it light if you put the leaf light on the outside. Does that make sense? Oh, we're missing one more. I guess the golden rule of thumb is a lot of times you put things in, actually I think I'm going to put that dark on the outside because it's really light right there. See how I did that? Change your mind. As long as this is really good and dry and multi-surface, you won't hurt anything. Okay, so I'm going to put another dark one there. And then so now I gotta let this one dry to catch up. I like making them fancy. And then just use the side of your brush to kind of lighten that up a bit. Okay, because we're gonna have to go over that one. Okay, so now it's decision time. If you want to carry on and copy my design, you're more than welcome to do that if you like. You can definitely add a poinsettia in there if you want. I think I will put a poinsettia in there with you guys. And maybe we should do it red, eh? Like a little bit of redness will brighten things up. Here's our berry wine. The yellow. I messed up my other plate. That's why I have to make a new one. And moon yellow. You can go back to your 16 if you want to do those back petals. The engine red, berry wine, and I use the moon yellow because it's a little bit richer yellow. It's a little darker yellow. Or if you have a daffodil yellow, that will be fine too. Okay, so when you're up in the air and painting like this, definitely it's easier to have your plastic palette in there. Put 2 poinsettias or just one big poinsettia with a bunch of little flowers beside it. You know, make it however you like. Okay, so I'm going to figure out that I'm going to start my poinsettia a little bit over to this side, I think. My 5. Okay, and I'm trying not to paint over this leaf because I know I want to fix that guy. Yeah, definitely. That's about in the middle, so that should be good for a little while. Okay, so again, if you feel like you're not getting enough coverage, you know, you can definitely, you know, do all 5 petals. Okay, and the ones in the back can be darker. You don't have to worry about any yellow in the back ones. Okay, And you can overlap a little bit too if you really want to. Because this one I made a little bit fat, so then just kind of overlap it a little bit. Not worrying too much about the yellow right now. If I feel like I have to do another stroke, then I'll definitely add a little more yellow the second time. And I just want to get it almost like a base coat. Right, made it a little bit fat. Okay, and then sometimes it doesn't let me go all the way across, so I'll just keep adding a little bit more paint until I can get it to work. Right, and then it's the berry wine that you don't need a lot of. It's the engine red you need more of because that's going further, right? The berry wine isn't going very far. It's just the engine red that needs to get out there. And then you can bring that in there. If you feel like you want to go over it again and make things a little bit bigger or higher, like this one here is looking at a proportion. So I can go up a little bit higher. Bring him out a little bit more. Okay. Do the same over here. Make it look like a star, right? A little bit more out here. But I don't want to make it any fatter, so I'm trying to really just focus on making them longer, not fatter. Not paying attention here. There we go. Okay, a little bit longer, but not fatter. And sometimes I do it this way too, right? You can do all the strokes in two different directions. Okay, so I'm just smoothing out any globbiness that I might have. I don't want big thick globs in the center. And so we can take a second now and go back to your 12 and go over your leaf if you want. And let that first layer try to dry a little bit. Or you can pull out your blow dryer if you want. And dry it a little bit so then that way you have more control. And your lighter colors will stand out a little bit more. So I'm just going to go over this guy again really quick. Color in the middle a little bit. And there we go. If you went over your stroke a little bit, you made a mess, you can always clean up anywhere you have. If it starts to dry a little bit, Donna also has these rubber erasers, and they work really good too. Like you can kind of erase the paint a little bit. It makes it look a little bit gray right now, but once I take my clean wet brush, it rinses right off. And that's another cool little trick. If you have these little rubber things, they come with like 3 different sizes. Alright, so now we're going to go and put the second layer of our poinsettia on. And like I said, if you have the brush and water, I dry it really well. I don't clean all the red out. I just make sure that I put it in there so it doesn't dry on me. But I'm going to use it again. So now I'm going to add just a titch of yellow into my blend to brighten up that red. So it's a little bit more like an orangey red with my, okay, so your pivot point is going to be always in the center here. Okay, and now you can go out and make some a little bit smaller petals. Pick up a little bit more yellow if you feel like it's not bright enough in front of your other petals. Okay, so about halfway in between again. It's like a dirty red. It's not really yellow popping out. It's just a very subtle, lighter color. Okay, so another one over here. Adding more paint every stroke. Now I'm going really upside down. It's safer to do this one sideways. Okay, so now I can overlap my leaf. And then take a look at your original strokes. Do I need to fix them? Am I getting enough coverage? Can I see the strokes underneath them? Make sure you're happy with these guys. Okay, so I think it's just these two top ones that I'm not as happy with. It's not a real strong point either. You don't have to make them like peaky. You can make them a little bit softer around the top. Okay. Now this one I'm adding just a little bit more yellow than the last layer and a very, very small titch of white. Just enough to brighten that up a little bit more. Okay. And then these ones, you can see that I'm going in and I'm only using 3/4 of my brush until I get into the area where I want to push. Just to start it, I'm starting with just the point until I get to the half point. Then I use the whole brush and come out. Little tricks. And then I'm going to go here. That one was a little bit big. I can make this one really, really tiny. You know, because that's the way they grow. They come out in different times, so some of them are a little bit bigger. Go over this one again a little bit just to brighten it up again. Just a little bit more. If you want to put in, like I said, just the tiniest little one. He's just a little babyist. It's a tiny little baby guy. You know, they have lots of little layers, right? So you can just gonna make them smaller and smaller and smaller as you go. Okay, so we're gonna let that dry for a while and continue on with my teardrop 5-petal flowers. Oh, before we put our red away, I know there was something we're going to forget. We're going to do our flame. So all you really need is the engine red and some yellow. Okay. And then also just a tiny little bit of white to brighten that yellow up because it's a really dark yellow, right? So that way you can see almost like a coral thing happening in the middle. You get the little bit more brighter there. Okay, you got a good blend. And then I'm going to go over and I'm going to pick up a little bit of white before I do that stroke. Okay, so our flames are actually almost reverse teardrops. Okay, sorry about that, guys. A little bit of a backwards, it's a teardrop, but you're putting the light, the white at the very top. Okay, I'm going to come really close for this third one here. Okay, so I have red and yellow, and then I still have a little tiny bit of white. All right, so you got it nice and close for you there. Okay, so you have an angle here and an angle here. So it's just like those flowers we're doing, right? But the white is at the top and just a little bit of a scoop down and then scoop up. Okay, so you can see that little bit of white right at the top and the yellow and the red. That's how I just did my flame. Okay. If you feel like you want to go a little bit lower, just make that a little bit lower. I just push down a little bit harder. Okay, just because my pivot point at the top has to stay still. Okay, and I can make that just a little bit bigger. That's basically all the little flames are. So we're repeating the same stroke, we're doing different things with it. Okay, so now we can still use the 12, and we're going to load with our light green and our white, and blend, double blend for our flower colors, okay? And when you start to do those, we're going to work at the back and work our way forward. So you can see some of these flowers, you don't see all 5 petals. You only see 4, or you see 3, or whatever, right? And then these ones in the front, you can see there's only a couple of them that you can see actually all 5 of them. So it's okay just to do a few darker ones and then work your way a little lighter and lighter at the front, as you get to the front. So we're going to start at the back over here, and we're going to put a couple teardrop shapes there. Okay, so we can even put one there. It's a shame to hide some of your beautiful holly leaves, but if there's a part of your holly leaf that you don't like, then that's an excellent opportunity just to put a flower on top of it. Okay, so I'm just going to go over these again a little bit more better coverage. Good. You don't have fussy like that. So I'm only going to put 3 there. Okay, then I'm going to put a couple down here. Okay. Then I'm going to come over and I'm going to put a couple over here. You're going to have a couple peekaboo out the side of this guy. And so you can just put 2 there. And then we can put another one there. I need a cameraman. You know, any good cameraman? Okay. So we can do a whole one down here if you want. Okay. So you do both sides, and then you do the bottom. So this way I like to spread it out. So if I feel like if you want to go over anything again, right, just kind of look where you want to end it. The very, very bottom and all around the outside, sometimes you only see one little guy, you know? Okay, so if you feel like you want to go over it, by the time you get back up here, it's drier. You can go over it. So now I'm going to move down a little bit more. I can start another flower. And now, once your brush is loaded, all I'm doing is I keep picking up a little bit of white on my brush, and I just do it. I don't even blend my brush anymore. I just keep picking up white. So this one I'll do 4. Okay. And if you feel like you want to fix anything, definitely go back and fix something before you layer more on it. Okay. And I just keep picking up more white on my brush. And then once I start to see my lime green disappearing and getting dry on me, then I'll go and I'll refresh my lime green. Or if I'm really globby on the end, then I'll hit it, my blending area, just to, you know, blend out my paint again so that I'm not globby. Add that guy. And fix this one. Running out of white. So then if you can want to add another one there, you can put one there. And then I'm going to just overlap them if you want to. And I'm trying to create a whole bunch of them. And work my way up. Put a little one back there just to hide something there. Yeah, have fun with them. And so I'm going to put one right there. We got a dirty white happening. And then as you get to running out of space, then you can start finishing them and doing 5 of them. Layering right on top of that underneath guy. Okay. Yeah, that's good. If you want to pop a couple more up here, you can pop just the little guys, just little tiny ones when they're out, because they're like little new ones, right? You can always do like little tiny ones here and there too, and work your way down. Like there's a little tier of them hiding back there. Something over here if you want to add another one. That's looking pretty full. Again, we can always pop a couple over here. So you're not seeing them too much now if you go on too much on the white. I'm trying to tuck this one behind this leaf. I don't want to. And if you feel like you're covering too much of something, then you can just go back in and erase it a little bit. I want to see the edge of that leaf pop out. I'm going to touch that by accident. Green over that. I have paint on my nails probably. Remember my new nails? They don't look too good right now. Okay, so basically you can just add like little centers. You can make them a little bit more darker if you want. And just add little dots here and there. You know, like I said, I make them different every time. Little dots here, little dots there. And then we can add our center now of our poinsettia. Just a little bit of a base there. And mix a little bit of the dark green in there too. And then just ever so light here and there with your white. Just very tiny little dots. You can always do it with a detailer if you really want to make them more precise. And then a few red dots for our hollies that we have here and there. Can't forget those. So we can always pop a few of those. And that's just basically the back of my brush I'm using. And you don't always have to put 3. You can, you know, throw every once in a while, just throw 2 or 1. 3. Make them like in a triangle formation. And sometimes just 1 here and there. And so how do you think about that? And spread them out a little bit, right? Not too many, just a few here and there. Because we made this now poinsettia red, so it really stands out. And then once this is dry, you can take a little detailer and just put the smallest amount of white on your brush. These aren't dry, by the way. And just kind of put a little shine lines in them. I'm just trying to be very light on my touch. Just little lines here and there. And then when I did with my shadowing around the flame, what I did there was I had basically a little bit of a dirty brush and just a very, very, very soft white wash of color. So I'm picking up floating medium and loading a dry brush with loading medium. I just grabbed a new one, and you can grab any one. This is another 12. And now I'm just picking up a very slight amount of white on my brush with lots of floating medium. Okay, and just blend that in a little bit. And then just making that little circle glow. Yeah, just a very light little glow here and there. You don't even have to make a full circle. You're just making it glow a little bit on the top and maybe a little bit on the bottom, right? You don't even have to make a full circle. All right, so I'm just doing a little bit of a glow line. Okay, so you can use like a dark green for this too. You don't have to use the gray color. You can use just like a thicket. Again, we're going to do the same trick with just the floating medium and a tiny, tiny little bit of the thicket on the side, right? And then we're going to go underneath here, and we can shade all the way around the side of the candle. And then we're going to go under the candle under the drip so that we can shade it and make that stand out a little bit more. And then you can also do a little bit of shading on the back of the candle and behind it and up the side. You can do the shading before you do the glow. I'm covering a bit of my glow, so you can do the shading first, actually, or if you can stay away from it a little bit, and then yeah, see how that stands out a little bit more now. Yeah, definitely. You gotta add a little bit of shading here and there sometimes to make things pop out a little bit more. And it's just very easy with floating medium and just the smallest amount of color just around the edges of the original background colors, right? And then around the side, try to keep my hand out of it. I have some areas that are still wet, so this is the tricky part now, is trying to stay out of my flames. There we go. I'll tie things together now. Like that. And again, if you have too much coverage, don't be afraid to erase things. I get a little happy. Fingers work really well too. And yeah, anywhere you feel like you need a little bit more of a pop, you can always shade a little bit underneath these leaves a little bit more. And I can always go in and fix things. So you can always add just a little bit more shading underneath things. Just enough to say you're dirtying the area a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so like I said, you can always add a little bit more shading into things to break things up a little bit. If you feel like your poinsettias aren't dark enough in any area, you can always go back in with a little bit of berry wine and go underneath a few strokes too, and that'll make your lighter ones even pop out more. Sometimes you don't need more highlight. Sometimes you need more shadow to make the lighter look lighter. So the darker you can make it look underneath the light, it seems like it made it look lighter. It's illusion.
Yeah.
Right? So the same thing with here. You know, you can play around and just kind of put just little subtle shadows in, not very strong. I mean that one really strong, just to kind of break things up a little bit and soften things a little bit, right? Like I'm happy with my darkness, right? But if you felt like your petals or leaves or anywhere is not light enough, sometimes you can add highlight. You can also add shadow. So what you're going to do is you've got your floating medium, and then you're going to grab your little bit of berry wine, right? Work that in a little bit. And you're going to do the same trick as adding a little bit more shading underneath those little petals with some berry wine.
It makes them pop out.
Yeah, and make, you know, putting that little bit of dark underneath the light, it makes this look lighter. If you felt like you wanted to have a little bit more of a highlight on anything, that's a good one, or fix anything on the edge with my leaf, that's a good one to fix. So again, just a floating medium, your dark green, blend that in so it's just a gradient on the outside of your brush, and you can use a smaller brush and just go around the outsides of your thing, and it'll just kind of shade it up a little bit more. And then you can do the other side the same way. You're going to do the light with the lighter ones that we did. Say you want that to stand out just a little bit more brighter. I go over the edges. I lost you again, didn't I? Oh, you see me. Okay, see how I just highlighted that a little bit? So just very subtle. Okay, make sure that it's not too strong. Okay, turn that guy around. Okay, so because you're not seeing this leaf very good, right? So if I want to add a little bit more highlight to it, okay, make sure you got a strong white that's just on the edge, and you still got a lot of clarity going on through, because otherwise you'll just make everything look all milky. It's just the very, very corner of your brush that you're using, just to put that little bit of highlight. You see that? How it pops that up? Oops. Okay. So you're just gonna use it as a little highlighting trick to fix anything you don't like. You see how that stands out a little bit more? And you can still see the light green. And just blend it a little bit so it's soft, not like a line. And if it's got lots of floating medium, you can keep playing with it and blending it softer. If you have too much paint in there, pick up a bit more floating medium and dilute it. Dilute it so that it's washy on, right? So you can really blend it, but you still have a strong little bit of on the edge of the white. My camera lost its, there you go. Tighten that up, it won't move. And where are you? There you are. Okay, those two highlight ones. You see how this one turned out a little bit lighter, but this one here is very subtle. You see that? I like this one better. So you see how I just added more highlight to it without doing it all at the same time as the leaf. And a lot of the times, like I said, I just hid a lot of that. So all I needed to do was highlight what you can see. So I was able to go pop in that little highlight all by itself. I didn't need to do it with the leaf to get that third color. And obviously the dark ones don't need it. But if you're doing light on the outside and you're not getting enough contrast, then just add just a titch more highlight to your leaves to make it pop out. So can you see how that little trick with the one color and the floating medium really helps to give that little extra pop to things after? My camera keeps moving on me. There we go, I tightened it up now. I put it and it kept moving back. Okay, I'm going to zoom out so that you can see a little better the full thing. Where are we? Video. A little bit different than the first one, eh? 2 years more of inspiration too. A little bit brighter. Can't make them the same. Even though I tell you what colors I used, I just somehow when I get painting, I end up just grabbing little different variations. My strokes are way better today than they were 2 years ago, I just have to say. Yeah.
You passed the audition.
Thank
You're
you.
hired.
Thank you, thank you. I can get a little scatterbrained sometimes, but I think all artists are a little bit
Oh,
scatterbrained.
you have to be.
You get excited and lost in your work, and then all of a sudden you're doing something you didn't even plan. You know,
Yeah.
I keep trying harder and harder things and making things more complicated. So, you know, do whatever you feel comfortable with, and then just keep practicing the rest, and then eventually you'll get it.
Sometimes it's like you do it and you just can't get it, and you go to sleep and you wake up the next day and all of a sudden you're doing it.
Exactly, definitely. That is something that's really important to do. Step away when you feel frustrated. If you're not having fun anymore, step away, have a little break, and then come back to it, and then keep practicing on the paper. I've seen it where I've watched videos, and then 6 months later I watch the same video. I'm like, I didn't see that last time.
Yeah, exactly.
So definitely keep watching it, and then, you know, bringing it back out again and watching it again, because they say we only really grab 40% of the information given in a seminar. So that's not very much, really. Like, you walk away thinking that's all you remember after. There was like 60% that I didn't remember. Like,
Yeah.
to go back to notes, you have to go back to revisiting that information again to remind yourself. So it's not a lot that you're going to grab in your subconscious. right away. So definitely go back and watch those videos over and over
And
again.
also, sometimes it's not the next day. Sometimes you just give up, and all of a sudden you're doing something, and you go, "How did I do that?"
Yeah.
Yeah, before.
Magical discoveries.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd love to see your versions. I'd love it if you shared it on the group to get that community going and getting more people sharing their practices and things that they done that I could have inspired them to try, so to encourage other people to try my courses. I did probably do a little bit of reverse shading in here again. You know how I did the center here? Like I did the shading under here too, but then after it's dry, you can go in there and do some reverse shading like on the inside of that bubble just to define it a little bit more. So you're actually shading on both sides, right? You're shading on the inside and the outside like I did on the center here.
So I guess I was just so excited over the whole thing. I hadn't did a paint party in a while, and get 2 cameras today and trying to set that up and learn how to navigate both cameras at the same time, and crash lesson on myself last minute with no little break there before we started the party. So here I'm showing you how I'm just kind of waiting out the top of that bubble a little bit so that it looks like it's actually spilling over, right? So you don't see the whole process of me shading every little thing, but I'm going to take some really good after pictures and close-ups of all the different areas that I did more shadowing. And you can see even in the middle between the 2 candles, it doesn't really look like it's back there. So I shaded on the other side of those lines of the 2 little candles, and I shaded on the outside of that as well, and deepened that a little bit, and hopefully you'll be able to see that in the pictures. So you can see it was just a little too dark in some areas too, so I was trying to do like a lighter gray and add a little bit more, pooling of waxing look at the top. So yeah, you'll see me fiddling with it and playing with it. You can see that one on the left. I never do get around to it through the video. I just wanted to show you a few, how I kind of tried to correct them. But I fixed that one too. And like you said, you will see it in the picture looking much nicer than that little corner blob thing there I had. Looks like maybe a chip out of the top of the candle, maybe missing. So yeah, hoping you're enjoying this little voiceover. I decided that usually I've done some little extras and I just usually put music to it. And then I found this video editor. It was a little different on my phone, so I put it on my phone so that I can try and talk over it. And it's quite funny, actually. This is my very first voiceover, guys, so hopefully you'll see them get better in the future. So yeah, I get to watch it and look at myself, and what was I doing here? Oh yeah, I need a little bit more over here. Notice that angle. Trying to darken it all the way around. And on the other side of that bubble there, it'd be more like the darker green, like the thicket. I'm just trying to keep the gray tones on the candle and then the green tones off the candle. So you can go around that, the outside a little bit more with green if it needs it. Oops, I put a little bit too much gray in there. You'll see me white that back out again. Just trying to get rid of that excess gray. Put a little bit too much black on my brush there. So you'll see me wipe some of that corner out and whiten that back up. So yeah, no, I'm not perfect. But I try and I keep playing until I look at it. It looks right. And hopefully you'll get it too. I'm going to also add the pictures to the end of the video here, like a little mini pictorial after this, so that you can have it a part of the video. And then I'm also going to add them into the PDF. So if you do want to print them out or keep them on your computer to look at them there quickly, then you don't always have to go back to the video. You always have the PDF as a backup resource to remind yourself of the steps and little things that we did. And so you have two choices there. I picked up a little strip liner too and made some inky white. Trying to show you here. Oh, I made it a little bit inky, and I just put little highlights here and there too, and that adds to pop it up here and there. I didn't finish that one, so I'll get back to that guy. Yeah, here and there, brightened it up in some places, and then I darkened it and more in other places. I just wanted to show you a little quick finishing things that I do to finish it. So you can use a shorter little detailer if you want. And then you can finish all the little tips on your leaves. You know, if it didn't finish properly or neatly, you can always go back and add little points here and there and neaten things up. Get fussy. Right. So we don't always have a lot of time at the end of the paint parties to get really fussy. So otherwise our paint parties can turn into 5 hours, I'm sure. You can always add more highlights and darken things and go over the edges of the little white flowers if you wanted to with a detailer or a smaller brush and just highlight them a little brighter. And the curlicues, yes, could add some more water in there to make some more curlicues. But I do go through them, and we have lots of dancing that we do in the third course. If you get a chance to play with the third course, a practice course, it's all about dancing with your liner brush. There's lots of little cute projects in there to give you lots of practice how to bounce up and down and make it wiggle and do crazy things. I'm just quickly going to show you a couple, like I said, little extra details, but look closely at the finished pictures. You will see all the shading in between the candles that I added, and I did go over my little circles around the flames a little bit more because I found they were very faint when they dried. So I did go over them just a little tiny bit more to bring them out a bit more. And yeah, just add those little finishing touches to make it done. And like I said, just twirl that brush to get a nice point. Let's see, maybe one more over here. Oh, yucky. That one's way too fat. Ooh. Let's erase that. Ick. Gone. See? Never happened. So you can do that. You know, don't be afraid. You know, as long as your background is dry, you can erase whatever you didn't like and then try a little bit lighter touch to it. And maybe more vertical up and straight up and down with your brush. You know, just try to have fun with it, loosen up. And then, of course, one more thing. We'll gotta sign our projects. And you can date it and put it away. And, you know, it's funny, like you said, even a couple of years of a difference between the first version and the second version. You know, I really notice a big difference in my work too. So keep practicing. Bye bye. Love you guys.
Thanks so much, everybody who come to join me tonight. It was just an amazing night. Thank you so much.